I don't think decisions are hard, to tell you the truth. You either make the decision in your own mind, in your own gut, and then you talk to people and you try and say, look, these are the ramifications if you do this, these are the ramifications if you don't do this. These are your options. So you need to look at that and you need to say, okay, what do you really think is the best way to go? I may not get the result that should happen, as in the case of the pool, but again, that's the will of the constituents. They get to decide, especially on a big ticket item, because they have to borrow the money to do it.
Welcome to the Cross Border Interviews, the online show where we dive into the insights of municipal political leaders from across Canada. Now, our mission on this show is quite simple. It is to shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that we call home. And joining us for today's episode is Cariboo Regional District Director, Barbara Bachmeier. The Cariboo Regional District is the central interior of BC. The Cariboo and Coastal mountain ranges hug the CRD on its west and east side boundaries. The region straddles Highway 97 from 70 Mile House in the south to 5 kilometers south of Hixon in the north. Incorporated in 1968, the CRD has 12 electoral areas and 4 incorporated municipalities. Municipalities which include Quesnel, William Lake, 100 Mile House, and Wells. Across Canada, our cities, towns, villages, and rural communities are alive with stories waiting to be told. Stories of innovation and economic development, resilience in the face of the housing challenges, and the financial hurdles municipalities overcome every day. At the Cross Border Network, we bring these stories to life. From coast to coast to coast, we're connecting Canadians to the issues shaping our communities and showcasing the people working tirelessly to make them thrive. With your support, we can expand our reach, amplify more voices, and shine a light on the challenges and triumphs of municipal life. For as little as $3.99 a month, you can help us grow and continue sharing the stories that matter most. Join us today and be part of this important mission. Together, we can tell more stories, build stronger communities, and make a real difference. Support the Cross Border Network now. Visit www.crossborderinterviews.ca today. Director, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about your community. And I want to start by talking about yourself, if you don't mind. So I've got to start by asking a simple question, but it's the premise of this entire show. And that is, where did your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Barb?
Oh boy. um, I just there was our director at the time was he was a one-term guy. He only said he would run for one term. And I thought, and I just wanted to step in and help people out as best I could. I've been kind of watching what was going on and some of the issues and things like that in our communities. And so I just went forward and put my name in the hat and won.
Had you always been interested in politics, or was this something that came later on in life?
Well, I kind of kept my ear to the ground, but not necessarily as much as going into politics. I never thought I'd be a politician at all. I work construction, so it's a far cry from politics.
So how does a person who is in construction become a politician? Because you don't just run because someone's not running. There must have been a little itch in the back of Barb's head that said, I could do what he does or she does.
Yeah, pretty much. We had some issues in our community and I wanted to help solve them. So that's one of the reasons why I got involved. We had 3 people run in 2018, and I was working out of town of all things at the time and thought, well, what the heck? If I don't do it now, I'll never do it and I'll kick my ass on the road later. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and here I am.
So, for those who may not know, I addressed you as director at the top of the interview.
Yeah.
What is the difference between a director and a counselor, in your opinion, or are they the same? Because from anyone who's listening to this outside of British Columbia, they're going, Chris, why are you having someone who's a director on your show? You stick with mayors, reeves, counselors. So, what is a director's job, in your opinion?
Um, well, the difference between a counselor and a director, excuse me, is a person who is elected to represent a specific area outside of a municipality. So in British Columbia, we have what's known as regional districts. And in the Cariboo, we have 12 directors representing different areas of our 83,000 square kilometers outside of the municipalities. So there's 4 municipalities that also sit on our board. That's Quesnel, Williams Lake, the District of Wells, and the District of 100 Mile House. So there's 16 people that sit on our board at the Cariboo Regional District in Williams Lake. So I kind of would equate a director to someone in Alberta who's outside of a municipality. I'm not sure how their politics go, but
So it would be basically the size of a county in Alberta. So it's
yeah,
similar to what you'd be more speaking about rural issues rather than
yes,
urban issues.
yes, yeah.
Okay, that's good to hear. So knowing that now, for a for the Cariboo Regional District, as one of their directors on their council, you have a very
On
large
your
area
board.
board, that is correct. You have a very large area that you have to oversee as a director on that board. How do you see your role as director in addressing the local issues of the people who voted for you against the entire districts, regional districts issues that are sort of in the area right now?
My communities are pretty engaged in what's going on as far as um, their local issues, So um, as a director in a certain area, I have one vote for that area most of the time. Sometimes it's weighted. But what happens is I have 2 fire departments that are in my area. So in order to do any kind of voting, the whole regional district has to vote on whether or not my fire department gets an increase so they can buy fire trucks and things like that. So I have a voice and I represent the community going forward saying, okay, well, they need a new fire truck, or the underwriters, the insurance underwriters won't agree to lower rates for fire insurance.
Insurance. Yeah.
So, obviously most of them, typically they go with what the director wants, but sometimes there's some other considerations that maybe the director hasn't thought about. And so that gets brought up and discussed and voted on one way or another. So yeah, so we kind of represent our own area, but we also have to take into consideration what's going on in other areas. So you can't just have one person making a decision and without any kind of checks and balances, let's say.
Is that hard to do for yourself? Because you represent one area, and if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, you represent the area closest to the municipality of Quesnel, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yeah.
And but you talk about Williams Lake, 100 Miles House, and those are pretty far away from where you reside. So how do you, as a director on the board, make decisions that are best interest for the entire community when you're so far away? Because you say your community is engaged, which I've spoken to people in your community, they are engaged. How do you balance those two opposing factors when you probably don't know exactly what's happening on the ground in Williams Lake every single day?
No, and the city of Williams Lake has their own mayor and council, so they look after their own stuff. It's just when we have things like, okay, so in the northern part of the regional district, there's Quesnel, uh, area A, B, C, and I. We have a sub-regional recreation committee or commission, and we all sit down and we deal with all the recreation issues like the pool, the skating arenas, the trails, the soccer, and all of that. So we sit down as a group with the mayor and council and the four directors, and we hash out, what are our priorities going forward? Do we want to have more trails? Do we want to fund different projects? So I've got a couple of projects on the go myself in my area. One is to do with upgrading our community hall and our skating rink and things like that. So obviously everybody has to be on board with these and has to go through the budgeting process. Quesnel itself wants to have like a pickleball court and stuff like that. And that kind of competes with what was going on in my area, but it's an indoor thing and in the winter, and it's an outdoor thing in the summer. So all of these things come together and we discuss it, and then we make a recommendation to the board of directors at the Cariboo Regional District, and usually they go along with it. And then there's other things too, like for example, we've put money aside in the Quesnel Community Foundation through taxation, and the people that can access, like local groups can access that money instead of coming to us all the time and asking for money. But yeah, that's one way that we do it. We put about $200,000 in there over a 2-year period, and the regional district like recommend through our economic development or whatever funding, we put in so much a year on top. So it just helps to fund a lot of the little projects that the community groups want to do.
But I can imagine, and since you've been first elected, you've had to make some pretty tough choices because you can't give everything to everyone because you only have a limited supply of money. For those who are not watching, the director eyes just lit up there when I said that. So how do you, as a director, make the best vote, best decision based on the idea that you're not going to please 100% of the people, because politics is politics, and in politics, you're going to upset somebody.
Yes, that's true. So as an example, we wanted to do a pool upgrade, and that was going to cost a lot of money. And so we have to go to the electorate or our constituents in the North Cariboo and say, do you want this? The first round they said, no, we don't want that. We want a slide included. So then we put it again to them, and yeah, they all voted it down again. So now we're stuck with, we still have to do repairs. So it's going to take a long time, and that's how we have to make those decisions, especially when they're big ticket items. The smaller ticket items, like for example, I have some money that I can allocate to groups once a year. And I have to look at it as far as, people will apply for this funding through a grant for assistance. And I have to look at it and go, well, is this for my particular area? Because they're the ones paying for it. And if it's not specifically for those people, then I have to say, I'm sorry. Here's some other avenues you might want to follow. For example, the Quesnel Community Foundation. And the ones that are specifically for my area and assisting the people in my area, like the food program for seniors in my area. There's a group that's doing that consistently. And so we give them a little bit of money, and the community association puts on some festivals and things like that. So they requested $2,500. So then we give them the $2,500, but it's specifically for area B. It's not for any other area. So
Uh,
yeah, you gotta make some hard choices and things like that. But yeah.
I want to go back to that decision making for a second, especially on those larger files, if you don't mind, because you were there to represent the people of your community, all the people in area B. And that
Yeah.
means sometimes you're going to be in conflict with some of the voices that you hear from. How do you, because we all have a moral compass inside ourselves. We all know, we all believe in things that we believe are right and wrong and what is best for our community. How do you make that decision? Does the decision always fall back to the will of the people? Or sometimes do you find yourself going against the will of the people and saying, I have to vote for what I believe is in the best interest of the entire community, not just the people who I'm hearing from?
Yeah. So there is a project that's we're going to be looking at. It's a sewer system for an area called Bushy Lake.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of controversy over it. There's a few people who are very loudly, adamantly against it. But unfortunately, the lake is in serious trouble because of sewage, quite frankly. And so my supposed moral compass says we have to fix this. We can't leave it for the next generation. But it's going to come down to eventually, like, and we're just starting our process of looking at what it's going to look like, doing an RFP to get a consultant to put together a plan, right? And that's the very beginning. So we've got some funding for that, $50,000, and we'll apply to the province for another 10. But we're just starting that this year. And then what'll happen is, like, the reason we even started it was because in 2009 there was a study done that basically the Ministry of Environment said thou shalt have a sewage system, and it never went forward from there. So there's a lot of things that need to happen on a big project. So you still have to engage the people, obviously, because they're the ones paying for it. And you have to try and get funding from other sources. And the biggest and the hardest problem is the fact that they have to say yes to the full amount. And then we can go and get the funding from the province and the federal government and any other source that we can find. And typically they will say, no, I don't want to spend that money. So my job then becomes, how do you convince the majority that this is a good way to go?
Is it easy to do that?
No.
I love how honest you are.
Dollars and cents.
We're 15 minutes into the interview, and I love the honesty that I'm getting from you already, Barb. So that tells you how well we're doing. Um, so when you do have to make those tough decisions, does it get easier over time? Because you've been in this position for some time now. Does it get
Yes.
easier, or does it still, is the decisions you're making today and those tough decisions you're making still as hard as you were making on day one?
I don't think decisions are hard, to tell you the truth. You either make the decision in your own mind, in your own gut, and then you talk to people and you try and say, look, these are the ramifications if you do this. These are the ramifications if you don't do this. These are your options. So you need to look at that and you need to say, okay, what do you really think is the best way to go? I may not get the result that should happen, as in the case of the pool, but again, that's the will of the constituents. They get to decide, especially on a big ticket item, because they have to borrow the money to do it. Okay, now interest rates are coming down, so hopefully
Here's hoping.
on
But
wood.
on the flip side of that, you're still only one vote on that board, right? You
Yeah,
still have to have a majority of directors who vote in favor of it at a board level. So
yes.
even if your constituents agree to it, so when you're
Ah,
looking, oh, when you're
if the
looking at, oh, go
constituents say yes, then it's a go.
really, is that how it
Very,
happens?
yes. I am the one that has to bring it to the board to start with because they have to do a whole bunch of work. They have to get the plan in place. They have to find, sources of money and they need to do presentations to the public and so on and so forth. So we're going through the steps. Whether it results in a yes vote by the constituents,
So it's
that's the
it
bottom line.
it's a reverse of what goes on in a traditional council in some sense, because traditionally they go to council first and then they go to the public. But in this case, you go to the board and then the public has the final say on it.
Yeah, if they vote
Wow,
no, it's no.
that is
Because we have to
fascinating.
because we have to borrow a lot of money, and this will be millions,
Yeah,
do this. And even though it's one of our priorities, water, sewer, fire departments, street lights, um, and a few other things that come off of their property taxes, this is all property tax money, right?
yeah.
So can they afford it? Some people can't, some people can. Do they want to keep fixing their old septic systems? Because it's all septic systems around there.
Yeah.
And every 20 years or so, you basically got to replace it. It doesn't, you clean out the tank and everything else, but it's the drain field gets plugged up over time. Whether
Wow.
they agree to that, well, most of them will swear that their septic systems are fine, even though they haven't looked at them for I don't know how long, but whatever. And they're close to a lake, and now we have riparian zones and stuff like that where you can't be anywhere near where they are right now. So yeah, I don't know.
I'm
There's a whole bunch of issues there.
Before we talk about the issues of the Cariboo Regional District in a few seconds, there's one area I want to touch on before we jump into them. And you talk about the engagement of your constituents, and there is engagement that you say there is, and I believe that. But when people engage with you, are they strictly talking about the regional district issues, or are they talking about provincial issues? Are they talking about federal issues? Because in my conversations that I've had with municipal leaders from across Canada, I hear all the time that municipal leaders are the closest to the people. So you're the ones you're going to hear about healthcare, you're going to hear about education, you're going to hear about, and I hate to say this because of the day we're recording this on the day that Justin Trudeau announced he resigned, but Justin Trudeau. So
Yeah.
do you get a sense that people will strictly talk to you about regional issues, or will they talk to you about any issue?
Um, they'll talk about any issue. We'll have conversations, but when it's a regional issue, and here's another example is we have uh, a road system that, that is a real problem. We have slide zones in my area. There's the 10 road recovery projects that the province has put on, and they decided that one of my roads that slid, they're not going to repair. And there's a lot of issues with that because it's the alternate route to Prince George. So I have constituents talking to me about that, and we've got kind of a plan going forward to say to the province, hey, that is not an acceptable answer to this problem. There are too many issues. Uh, we've already, experienced on November 29th, there was unfortunately an accident on Highway 97, and a young man lost his life and left behind wife and 3 kids, which really sucks. And that road was closed from 4:30 p.m. to midnight because there was no alternate route. And the old Quesnel Hixon Road was the alternate route to get back and forth from Quesnel and Prince George. And I've also heard that, and I've just heard this, and I don't know, I haven't specifically spoken to the people involved, but there was a baby born in G.R. Baker Hospital that needed to be in Prince George. And they had to wait until the road opened. And could
That's
have been
life and
too much.
death.
It's exactly life and death. And I've got people that live down in that area that the ambulance used to use the old Quesnel Hixon Road to get to them instead of making a left-hand turn off of a major highway with no turning lane. You know, I took a drove down there and I tried to turn onto Olson Road and guy come up racing behind me and I'm surprised my bumper's not somewhere down the road.
Wow.
You know, there's so many issues and roads are a big issue and that's a provincial responsibility. And unfortunately, it's affecting my constituents big time. So
continue.
So yeah, and I'm not positive about the baby situation because I heard that secondhand. But again, why would people? And he heard it from a doctor. So
Yeah.
you
So
know,
I want to turn to the issues of and I want to get this right, Cariboo Regional District here for a few seconds.
sure.
But before I do that, I want to preface this line of questioning by saying this. This is a conversation between the director and myself. This is not a motion of the board. This is not a direction of the board. This is her opinion and her opinion alone. That being said, it may line up with what she's hearing and what they're talking about at the board, but at the end of the day, it's still her opinion. With that being said, director, in your opinion, what do you believe is the biggest issue facing, and I'm going to sort of preface this in two different areas. What do you believe is the biggest issue or issue facing the people of Area B and Cariboo Regional District as a whole?
I think one of the bigger issues in my area, and it also subsequently to the Cariboo Regional District, is housing. We have a lot of people moving up from the coast who expect all kinds of things like water, sewer, garbage pickup, and they're moving to a rural area. And unfortunately, they don't necessarily get that. And what I'm also seeing, especially in Area B, is an aging demographic that would love to downsize, but there's nowhere for them to move without leaving the community, and they don't want to leave. So now I have a situation where we have younger people wanting to buy and older people saying, well, I don't want to leave. And that's an issue going forward because we're trying to attract professionals, doctors, teachers, accountants, whatever, into our areas. And that's also a problem Cariboo wide as well. So it affects my area, it affects area A, B, I, C, whatever. And you know, a lot of young people want to move here. We have lots of land. We have the capability of building homes in this area, but you know, again, home building is harder. Older folks are having problems maintaining their properties so that when they do sell them, they're not getting the dollars that they should. And I think that, you know, I don't know what the answer is. And I do know that the provincial government decided that, you know, you can build a fourplex or a sixplex on a property. And guess what? We don't have the services to increase the septic system from one family to six families. We just don't have it in the rural district. Plus, they've announced that if you're in a building inspection zone and your regional district is 100% in a building inspection zone, we will loan you $40,000 and whatever the criteria is, etc. If you double it, you know, if you put $80,000 in and build a suite in your basement, then we'll help you with this $40,000. So the issue then becomes the Cariboo Regional District is not 100% in a building inspection zone. We have 83,000 square kilometers and only one or two or three building inspectors who cover it. So we do have building inspection zones, but the province has kind of negated the entire area because we're not 100% building inspection. So there are some questions that we could probably look at. Some areas of some other regional districts have gone with you can opt in to be in get a building inspection done on your property. And so that seems to be something the province is going with. And I've just gone after them and said, look, you need to do it with the areas that are in building inspection, and then we can talk about the rest later. Or you can mandate everybody has to be in building inspection. Your choice, you know? And so we brought that forward. Of course, then the government had an election right after that, brought it up at UBCM. So, I had a ministry staff meeting there about that. So these are some of the things that as directors, we can actually at UBCM book meetings with ministers and ministry staff and have conversations and say, hey, these are the issues. What do you think what are you doing? Help us out here instead of making a roadblock.
I'm going to ask you to put on your sort of looking to the future hat for a few minutes. Do you think the regional district in the province can work together to solve this issue in 2025?
Oh boy, I'm not sure because we have a new government. It's a minority government. And with the minority government focused more on the lower mainland, I think that they're ignoring or have not considered the hinterland where we live, north of Hope, beyond Hope, we call it.
Love that.
The thing is what the province needs to start to realize is that when you look at, like, say, the Roman Empire, all roads lead to Rome, except when they don't. And when they don't, and you ignore the hinterland, guess what happens to your empire? It shrinks. It collapses, yes.
Yeah.
So when you're concerned about the lower mainland only, and that's where your voting block is, great for you, but the problem is if you forget that all of it's not just the population up here, all the resources are outside of the lower mainland. Well, 90% of them. We've got all the trees, we've got the mining, we've got canalava, which is lava rock that paves your driveways and things like that. And we've got so many resources. We got oil and gas in the north. We got hydro lines coming from the Bennett Dam, the Site C Dam, the Peace Canyon Dam. Those are all on the Peace River. I actually helped build the Site C Dam. I got finished up there in 23. So, yeah.
I think there's a lot of northern Alberta municipalities on the BC Alberta border who would like to thank you for that dam because they often talk about the Site C Dam in northern Alberta when I talk to them. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. But I mean, the hydro lines run straight down to Vancouver.
Yeah.
They're planning on powering up Highway 39 in the northeast with this new dam. They've got 2 generators online as of recently, like they had one like last year, and now the second one's up and running and producing power into the grid. And they got 4 more to go, and there'll be 1,100 megawatts of power coming out of that dam when it's fully up and running. So all of this stuff comes from the north, all of it. And it supplies power to the lower mainland. It supplies all the other resources. You want to build houses, you need 2x6s. Where does that come from? Right? You want to, and they keep stopping projects here. And
But that's just not that's not just the provincial government though. That's the federal and provincial government who are both actively, and I say this not as someone who has any opinion on this because that's my role as host, but that I'm trying to learn from you. But there's provincial and federal influences that are dictating what goes on in your area.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why people are tending towards people like Pierre Poilievre and
John
Rustad, because they're in the hinterland.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, they understand the concerns of the working people, families. We need, if we don't work on improving our hewers of wood and drawers of water kind of thing, where do you think the money comes from? It can't come from property taxation. That's just oblivion. It
Yeah.
can't come from um, Joe Blow working in the sawmill paying his taxes. But if you don't create more industry out here and create more work for people, especially when you're bringing so many into the country and the province, and you don't create work for these people, then your economy's got to crash, because the only way you're going to make more money is if you put these industries in, you make it viable for the companies, and then you actually go ahead and tax them at a lower rate. You're going to have more money in your coffers than if you do it any other way, at least in my opinion. Now, other people may disagree with me. I don't know.
But
I
that's the
mean,
great thing. We all have the right to our opinion, and that's why I love this show, because I get to learn about the opinions of municipal leaders from coast to coast to coast. I want to turn, if you don't mind, because I'm cautious of time, on the flip of that original question. What's the thing you are proud of when it comes to your community? What's the thing that you look at and you say, you know what? We have our housing challenges, we have our economic development challenges, but we've got this going right for us. What's that one thing for you?
I think what's going for this community is it's a nice community. People like to live here. People are moving here. Um, they work more or less together as far as being engaged in what's going on. We've got built trails. We've built, like, in one area in 10 Mile Lake area, we've got Costas Cove, which is a nice little area for swimming. And we've just built change rooms this year for the first time ever. And I've got a commission out there that's working hard at, doing trails. I think they threw in a cross-country ski trail, and they're expanding the trail system out there and stuff like that. We've got lots of places that we protect. And we have like a community center in the Bushy Lake area that's just going gung ho, fully booked most of the time, with either pickleball in the winter or weddings and funerals and you name it. And it's just a hopping place. And, people have to book online to get in there and rent the place. But, it went from nobody using it to everybody wanting to be there, and it's reasonably priced, right? So, that's the beauty of it. And it's a great place to be. And I know that we're looking forward to a referendum in a year or two for sewer, but how that's going to go, I have no idea. I might be fired by then. Elections up in 26.
You still got some time. You got some time, Barb.
We'll be fine.
Um, so on that note, you're talking about the good things,
Yeah.
and you broached a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and that is tourism. I love the hidden gems of this country. I believe that every municipality has a hidden gem. Now you talk about the things that like everyone knows about, Bushy Lake, and they can go out there and enjoy themselves. What's the hidden gems of your community? What's the thing that you say, I wish more people knew about this?
Um, Bushy Lake is a stopover for white pelicans in the spring. They come there even though and there's ice on the lake, and in the early spring they come there, and then they go and they nest in the Chilcotin. So they come here, they feed on the fish and flap around and fly around and whatever. I don't know if you've seen my web picture or whatever, but that's them. And yeah, so there's those birds.
Yeah.
And then not necessarily in my particular area, but we have sandhill cranes that are chest high to a horse. They're so tall. Yeah, riding down the road and there's a herd of sandhill cranes on. It's just crazy. But yeah, no, we have those. And
Sounds like a birder's paradise up there.
oh yeah, well, and we also have blue herons. that have a nesting site in my area. I'm not going to tell you where it is because they're protected. But if you were to come, I would show you.
Well, this summer I have a big plan. If it comes to fruition, I will be in Area B this summer. So
Right on.
I want you and I to go out to that area, protected area, but we're not going to go out there because it's protected, but we're going to go there.
Yeah. I mean, we do have trails out there and things like that, but we don't necessarily publicize it
Yeah.
because we don't want it to be a place where people go and disturb them. And that's important because if they pack up and leave, then who knows where they'll go, right? And they've
No.
been nesting there for so long. So, yeah,
Is
that's
there
one. And then we've got
oh,
all kinds of big cats. I've seen like cougars and lynx and bobcats. And of course, we have black bears and grizzlies aren't so much around here, but deer, moose, they all hang out around my place.
where do you go? After a long day of board meetings, after a long day of constituents town halls, is there a place that you go in the community that you can decompress and just let it all go?
Yeah, I do. I go out to clay mine trails and maybe walk around, not so much this time of year because it's icy. And I go out to Penchesicat Lake. I was out there yesterday. That's in Area I, which is just over the border from me. And I take my dog out there for walks and things like that. So there's lots of hiking trails around here. They have oh the biking trails in the summer. They've got the airport trails. They've expanded those. Costas Cove has trails. It's just amazing the trail networks around here, so there's lots of things to see. We have the dog sled mail run coming up in February.
I know that quite well because last year I got a Christmas card from Quesnel counselor Lorianne
Oh,
Rudenberger
right on.
from
Yeah.
the dog sled mail run, and I was like, "Holy crap! This is the first time I've ever gotten mail from a dog." So there you go.
Yeah, I was involved with that for a lot of years and up until the 25th annual. And then I thought, someone else can do this for a while.
Sometimes you don't want to overextend yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I come up here in 94 from the coast, and that's when I first discovered there was a mail run because I was living out in Wells and working in Barkerville. And yeah, so then I kind of joined the club and helped put it on a few times. And yeah, it
That's
was a
awesome.
lot of fun.
So I want to end on a final question for you, and it's an important one. Because, in your opinion, you know your community better than most people because you've been elected, you sit around the board, you talk about your community day in and day out with people. In your opinion, what makes the Cariboo Regional District such a unique place to live, work, and raise a family?
It's cheaper than the lower mainland by a long shot.
Best
The
answer I've ever
ability,
heard.
you've never heard that before, I bet. No, housing's reasonably priced up here. We are looking for professionals. We do have a landing program for medical doctors and nurses and whatever here, and it's been fairly successful. We have lost a few doctors to retirement and things like that, but we're welcoming them to our community. And this is a North Cariboo thing. It's not just Area B, but we need them, and a few of them live in my area, so they're my constituents. So yeah. What was the question again?
What makes the Cariboo Regional District such a unique place to live, work, and raise a family?
Well, yeah, and we've got a fairly good school system. There's a new one being built in town. Um, we've got lots of activities to do summer and winter. You got the bike riding, you've got horses. That's a huge thing in my community is horses. I've got two or three groups that are strictly horse groups. The Gymkhana Club, the Quesnel District Riding Club, the Backcountry Horsemen. And so it's a huge thing here. And I know our community hall has riding arenas and kind of, all of that. So there's so many things here. And it's not overrun by some of the issues in other communities, especially in the rural areas where the kids can go out and play. They don't have to worry about putting a collar on them just to keep them safe, you know? So,
It sounds like one of those communities that you know where all the kids are because their
yeah.
bikes are in the front yard of the neighbor's house.
Yeah. And if we had street lights, you'd know they'd come home when the street lights went. Yeah,
Barb,
it's a really nice community to live,
I'm
work,
looking forward
and
to
play.
visiting this summer. I
Oh,
truly
good.
am. And hopefully you and I can meet up while I'm there. But I truly want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I find these conversations so fascinating. And every time I do them, I go in with a complete open mind, knowing what I'm going to get is what's going to be on the other end of the conversation. And today I got an honest, funny, down to earth conversation. And it's the great way to start January 2025 on the show. So thank you so much for doing this
Thank you.
and being part of the show.
Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for tuning. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Cross Border Interviews. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insight. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite platform and follow us on social media. For even more content and to learn more about today's guest and the municipality that we spoke about, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends and community members to help us keep the conversation going. So until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back for another episode of Cross Border Interviews on Tuesday. Till then, everyone.